Great, from California, from Cork, from Tip, London, Wexford. Fantastic. Okay, so we're recording now. Just a little bit of housekeeping. So try and keep yourselves on mute if you can for the duration of the call. We'll have the first half of the event as we'll hear from our speakers, and the second half we'll have a Q&A. So if you have any questions for the speakers, please feel free to pop them in the chat and just keep their name in brackets if you'd like to address anyone in particular, and we'll hopefully get to them at the end of the session. Yeah, if you're posting on social media, please use the hashtag #GoGreenForVeganuary. So we're trying to create a bit of buzz about the event. So it's great to see you all here. We've got 50 people already, so it's really fantastic that everyone's joining on their Thursday evening. Just a little bit of an introduction about how Green for Veganuary came about. We're a group of animal rights and welfare activists, and we really wanted to do something to support Veganuary, the movement in Ireland. If I could just ask everyone to keep themselves on mute, that would be great. Or maybe Alice, you can mute everybody. So yeah, we really wanted to do something to support Veganuary in Ireland. We realized, there's a real importance around this issue. So we decided to call the event, Why Vegan, Why Now? And the aim of the campaign was really to get people involved and inspired in Veganuary, and to kind of shine a light on the animal welfare issues of the farming industry. Globally, we manage to feed and kill 70 to 80 billion farm animals per year, but we don't manage to feed the 7.8 billion people on the planet. So there's a real disconnect. The food system is really broken. But food is really central to all aspects of our lives. Obviously it has a huge environmental implications. It's central to our economy and our society and our culture. But there's a need for an understanding of the food system from that holistic perspective. So oftentimes we address issues of health or agriculture or animal welfare in just someone's sharing their screen. If Alice, maybe you could make sure that screen sharing is off for that person. Thanks. So yeah, we just wanted to create a space to have, a discussion around the holistic aspects of the food system, because, all of these issues, environmental, society, animal welfare, health, they're all really connected under the umbrella of the food system. The food system is this interconnected web, really, of everything that happens from the farm to your plate. And nowadays, food goes on this kind of colossal journey that's kind of invisible to us. We see it, in the supermarkets, or sometimes if we're, we might grow it at home, but it's grown, it's transported across multiple countries, it's processed, it's packaged, it's bought and then eaten and then thrown away. So there's all of this stuff that goes on in between that helps shape the food system. And just briefly to give a little bit of context about Ireland, the agriculture system in Ireland has a huge environmental impact. It's 33% of our greenhouse gas emissions. It's also 60% of our land mass that's used for agriculture, which is a huge amount used. And this is mostly for animal grazing. And animal agriculture is a leading cause of biodiversity loss and water pollution. 90% of our agriculture system is animal farming, and most of that is exported, around 90%. And we import then 85%. So that means we're a net food importer, and we're contributing to global food insecurity. We only grow 1% of our entire agriculture output is vegetables, which is crazy. And we've seen with the pandemic, we had no food on our shelves. So we're very vulnerable. Our food system is very vulnerable in Ireland. Fun fact, we imported something like 72,000 tons of potatoes in 2017, and most of these were from the UK. And we're a country that's kind of known for its potato, and we can't even produce enough to feed ourselves. From a health perspective, where 25% of the population is obese, and we have this rise of diet-related non-communicable diseases like heart disease and stroke. But then on the flip side, we have 1 in 10 children go to bed hungry in Ireland. So there's a real disconnect in how we manage our food system. And then, of course, there's the animal welfare issue. 53% of animals in Ireland never see the light of day, live in cages, and that's over 2 million. That's almost that's 2/5 of our population. And then, you know, when we talk about the link with zoonotic diseases and pandemics, as we've seen, you know, animal health is directly linked to human health these days. So our relationship with animals is really going to be important in the way that we, you know, in the way that we progress and the way that we address these issues. So how we transition the food system to a more sustainable model is really going to be crucial for creating a healthy environment, you know, a healthy economy and a healthy society. And it's really beyond time now to address animal cruelty in the food system. A plant-based diet is really recognized as the gold standard when it comes to health, environment, and of course animals. So yeah, we have this really short window of time to address these issues in light of the environmental crises, the animal welfare crises, biodiversity crises, and the health crises. The good news, though, is that we as consumers, we really do hold the power. So every time we pay for something, we're essentially casting our vote, and we can choose what we vote for. So that is enough for me. We hope you have a really, you know, enjoyable night tonight and learn something new. And again, if you have any questions, please pop them into the chat with who they're addressed to. I'm going to hand over to our first speaker. We are absolutely delighted to have Toni Vernelli from Veganuary. She's the International Head of Communications and Marketing. She's the daughter of a butcher from a small town in Northern Canada. Toni gave up meat in her teens when she learned that we can live and be healthy without it. She's now been vegan for more than 30 years and believes passionately that we need a mass shift towards plant-based eating, and is proud to be part of an organization fueling this change. And she also holds a PhD in animal behavior. So Toni's going to tell us a little bit about what Veganuary is all about. Thanks, Toni.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an amazing turnout. I've just got a couple of slides, so I'm going to share my screen with you, so bear with for just a moment. So it's good to see these things on a graph. I like a graph. Okay, so hopefully you can all see this. And hopefully you've all heard of Veganuary. If not before tonight, you'll have heard of it now that you've signed up for a Veganuary themed event. We're a UK-based charity. We started in 2014. We were founded by a husband and wife team, Matthew and Jane, who had recently gone vegan themselves. And they felt that although there were lots of vegan advocacy groups out there telling people why they might want to change to a vegan diet, there weren't enough groups offering support to people to make that change. So that's really what Veganuary's first remit is, you know, to support people who want to try vegan. In January, primarily, as the name suggests, but actually we do it all year round. So people can sign up to our pledge at any time of the year and they'll still get the same 31 days of email support. So that's the first thing that we do. The second thing we do is work with businesses to help increase the amount of vegan food that's available in shops and in restaurants on the high street, to make it a lot easier for people to eat plant-based, because we know that that's one of the barriers. People find it hard, particularly when they're eating out, to find vegan food. And then we work with celebrities and the media just to help raise awareness of the issues behind veganism and why people might want to try it. Last year we did some research with Kantar, and they calculated that 10 times more people actually try vegan in January than officially register with us on our website. So for 2019, they calculated it was 1.3 million people in the UK alone who actually tried going vegan in January, which is pretty phenomenal. And I think what really sets us apart from many other groups is that we try and do everything with a bit of fun. You know, we don't want to be the finger wagging vegans. We want to be the welcoming, friendly, and supportive vegans. We're not there to judge people. We're there to help them make the changes that they want to make in their own lives. And that model founded, the numbers of people taking part have skyrocketed. So you'll see in 2014, our first year, we had just over 3,000 people take part. Last year, we had 400,000 people. And this year, so far, we've had 560,000 people sign up, which is pretty mind-blowing. So we've now helped 1.5 million people try a vegan diet since we were founded, which is incredible. Our mission is to inspire and support people to try vegan. Our vision is a vegan world. You know, ultimately, that's what we'd like to see. We know it'll take a long time to get there, but we believe that it is possible. And then in the bottom corner, you'll see the reasons that people sign up to try vegan with us. This is from the 2020 cohort. So it's usually pretty evenly split between animals and animals and health. So it's interesting to see the difference with the crowd here tonight, that you had animals and then the environment actually slightly pipped it. But with the general population, it's sort of animals and health neck and neck most years. And, you know, one year one will topple the other, but they're usually pretty close. And then the environment is generally the third reason. I think more people are becoming aware of the environmental issues now, and that's increasing as a reason for people signing up. In 2019, I think it was 12%. So last year, 18%. So it did increase. And our signups actually come from all over the world. So last year we had them from 192 countries, which is every country in the world except for North Korea, Vatican City, and Eswatini, which used to be Swaziland. So that's pretty remarkable. But primarily we're getting signups from the English-speaking countries, because our pledge has been available in English longer than any other language. And then also Germany is very popular, and Latin America, where we started doing work a couple of years ago, we're really seeing a huge interest there in veganism, which is really encouraging. And then my last slide, just talking about the environmental impact that we've had. So these figures were calculated in the autumn before this year's campaign, when we had our 1 millionth participant from the time we started. And eating vegan for just 1 month, so this is just 31 days, these people saved 103,000 tons of carbon equivalent, the same as driving around the world 15,000 times in a petrol car. 405 tons of phosphorus equivalent, the same as sparing 1,600 tons of sewage from the waterways, and 6.2 million liters of water, the same as flushing the toilet 500,000 times. And of course, they spared the lives of millions of animals. So if anyone thinks going vegan for just 1 month can't make a difference, when we have collective action like this, it has a huge impact. That's Veganuary in a nutshell.
Oh, thank you so much, Toni. And it's just wonderful to have you here tonight. And I you know, what we loved about Veganuary is it's an inspiring and positive message. And it's just a great way of getting people engaged. And, you know, you provide so much information and support, and it's just really fun. And that's what we loved about it. And it's just a brilliant way of approaching this quite complex and sometimes a little bit contentious topic. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you.
Our next speaker will have Isabel Mulkerins. Isabel was born in Ireland and moved to Sweden in 2010. She's a nutritionist with a focus on plant-based vegan nutrition, and is currently doing her master's in nutrition in Sweden. And on the side, she also works through her social media and shares vegan recipes and health and nutrition advice. And Isabel has amassed a following on Instagram of at least 160,000 followers, and that's not including her blog and her YouTube as well. So very impressive for a young lady. So Isabel is going to talk to us a little bit about veganism from a health and nutrition perspective.
Hi, I hope all of you can hear me. Can you hear me?
By satellite.
Okay, great. So thank you for that introduction. As you said, I'm a nutritionist with a focus on vegan nutrition, or plant-based, as some call it. Doing my master's now. And also written a vegan nutrition ebook, which I released 2018. So I went vegan 2016, and it was kind of related to health, but it was after watching some vegan documentaries, and I felt like after watching them, I couldn't quite justify eating animal products. But yeah, so I thought I'd ask or answer the question of why vegan, why now, from a health and nutrition perspective, as that is my area of expertise. And studies show that there are a number of health benefits when eating vegan and plant-based, such as lower risk for cardiovascular disease, heart disease. There's a lower risk for diabetes type 2, often lower cholesterol, triglyceride levels, And of course, certain cancer forms often or related to diet, such as red meat. The recommendation for red meat is 500 grams per week, and many eat triple that amount in a week. But on cancer.org, there's a lot of information showing the risks of processed red meat. So there's a number of health benefits, but it of course kind of depends on, I guess, your type of diet on a vegan. There's many different ways of eating a vegan diet. And like Aoife mentioned about the food system, it's currently not a sustainable food system, not from a health perspective or a climate perspective, that the production of animal products has such an impact on the climate and the greenhouse gases. And even plant-based foods, which are transported, have a lower carbon emission compared to animal products. So how I see it, going vegan, eating plant-based, is benefit from individual health perspective for the environment, but also for the animals. And a tip I want to give for Veganuary when it comes to food is, one, get creative and follow food accounts on social media to get inspired, because you don't need to eat just salad and vegetables. And also to not forget to, many make the mistake of just cutting out and taking away animal products, but they don't replace them or substitute them. And that can mean that your diet is, you don't get the right nutrition, it's not sustainable, you're hungry. So you got to replace what you take away. So that was my tips. And I'm glad so many are here listening to this.
Thanks so much, Izzy. And I think that's such a good point. You raised a point about, the difference between vegan and plant-based. And I think you can eat vegan and just live on kind of pasta and bread. But then I think when you look at plant-based, you're really incorporating a much more diversity into your diet. And that's such an important point that people often miss, So yeah, thank you for raising that. That was great. Thank you. Our next speaker is Gerry Boland. Gerry is a Dubliner who's lived in rural North Roscommon for over 20 years. He's a founder and member of the Alliance for Animal Rights and has been vegetarian since 1985 and a vegan for the past 30 years. Last year, he established a campaigning and lobby group called Animals Behind Closed Doors, the focus of which is to raise public awareness about what goes on behind closed doors in the factory farming industry and to campaign for the end of factory farming. Before COVID, he gave regular presentations on factory farming in secondary schools and colleges in the Northwest region, and he plans to continue doing this once the pandemic restrictions have fully been lifted. So Gerry is going to talk to us a little bit about animals behind closed doors and being vegan. Thanks, Gerry.
Thank you, Aoife, and hello everyone. And it's great to see such a big crowd. It's great to see this event taking place. Thanks to Go Green for Veganuary for putting it together in such an incredible, with such incredible speed. I only have 3 or 4 minutes, so I'm not going to tell you why I became vegan or why I became vegetarian. Let's just say that it wasn't the path in my life I was thought I was going to take. Just a personal thing. I was an incredibly shy child, an incredibly shy teenager, and the idea that I kind of became an activist at a certain stage in my life, going on live national radio, speaking on behalf of animals, was as big a surprise to me as it was to my family. But just bringing right up to the present, I have had a conflict over the last 30 years between campaigning for animal rights and veganism and earning a living. And quite often earning a living has won that battle. And in the last, I'd say year and a half, and certainly since the pandemic, I just couldn't remain silent any longer. So that's really what my short talk is about. I suppose you're either driven by a cause or you're not driven by a cause. But this is a cause that kind of came to me midway through my life. And it's not that I don't have any other causes, but it's an important cause to me because sometimes sometimes in the middle of the day, I can't really come to terms with the reality of what's going on. And I know human nature is fairly strange and we do some awful things. But sometimes it's like I'm living in a dream world, that everything is so obvious. It's like hidden in plain sight. Everything is so obvious in relation to how the world works in relation to animals and factory farming and farming in general. And yet nobody seems to be able to see it, apart from the people on screen and lots of other people, of course, as well. The wonderful thing is, of course, as you all know on screen, is that the tide is turning. Now it needs to turn a long, long way. Because the industry we're fighting against is incredibly powerful, and as we're making inroads in what we might call the developing world and the Western world, as you well know, the situation in China with pigs is just becoming incredible. So this is not an industry that's going to go away. This is an industry that is ahead of the game all of the time, that is way ahead of us in relation to our planning. The great thing about it is that we have right on our side. We know that what is happening to animals as we speak, right across the world, we know what's happening to them is completely immoral, completely unethical, and also we now know completely unsustainable. And the arguments, as Aoife and other people tonight will point out, the arguments are irrefutable. So I have seen, as you have seen, I think, in the last 12 months, a massive change in what's happening. Veganuary is a classic example of it, but you see it when you walk into a supermarket. You see the amount of vegan foods available. So to finish off, I set up this organization because, like, for the rest of my life that I can actually speak, I have a voice, and I know it's a cliche, but I have a voice and the animals don't. And cliches, we use cliches because they're true. And even though it is pushing me way beyond my comfort zone to do what I'm doing tonight, but particularly to do live radio interviews, I'm doing it because I have a voice and because I actually can speak and I can articulate these things. And very few people, and I'm sure anybody who's been listening to the Irish radio for the last 20 years, the voices are never there. There's hardly anybody speaking about these issues. So that's my aim for the next months and years ahead, is to get out onto the national radio stations and basically just explain and try to persuade people. And that's really all I want to say, I think. Yeah, that's it. I hope that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gerry, and it's great to have you here. You're doing fantastic work with animals behind closed doors, and as you say, it's this kind of hidden thing that people kind of don't really want to think about, and it's hidden for a reason. The industry works very hard at this, and you mentioned there's two kind of things here. We have two strains of, there's an animal welfare issue, but then there's also the animal rights issue, and like you say, the industry is kind of not going anywhere for now. So as we have it, we need to do our best to make sure that it is transparent and that people have access to this information and know that also that there's another way. It doesn't have to be this way. So thanks, Gerry, for coming on the call. Very delighted to have you here. Our next speaker is Sadhbh O'Neill. Sadhbh is currently the policy coordinator of the Stop Climate Chaos Coalition, an advocacy network of over 40 youth, environmental, international development and faith-based organizations in support of faster and fairer climate action. She's also an occasional lecturer and in environmental politics and climate law, and is PhD candidate at the School of Politics and International Relations at UCD, where she is completing her research thesis on ethics and carbon markets. She has a long history of engagement with environmental campaigns and is a former Green Party councillor in Dublin City. So Sadhbh, we're delighted to have you tonight, and we're looking forward to you speaking to us a little bit about the climate and environmental aspects of the food system. So thanks for being with us tonight.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. And just to follow on from what Gerry was saying, never underestimate the impact that you have as an individual. In fact, I carry with me all the time Greta's book, No one is too small to make a difference, and no one, Gerry, is too shy to make a difference, and you certainly have. And so don't underestimate your impact. I've very little time, so I'm just going to speed a little bit through the Irish context. So apologies to people who are outside of Ireland, but there's a few facts and figures here which will hopefully paint the picture of what's actually happening. Ireland is known as a laggard in climate policy across Europe. We are missing our targets, and we are producing about 60 million tonnes of carbon dioxide per annum, with very high emission per capita rates relative to other countries. And we've actually increased the amount of emissions we're putting into the atmosphere above our 1990 levels. So when we signed the Framework Convention back in 1992, we committed to lowering emissions below 1990 levels, when in fact we've been increasing them. Now, since 2011, emissions have been increasing upwards again, with a peak in emissions reported in 2018. And this is largely due to the expansion of the agricultural sector, because emissions were coming down from other sectors during this period. In the last 10 years, dairy cow numbers have increased by nearly 40%, with a corresponding milk production increase of over 67%. And these figures are from the EPA, just in case you're wondering. And this reflects the national plans to increase and expand milk production under national policy plan. And also it's a plan of the processors called Foodwise 2025 that was introduced after the abolition of the milk quota in 2015. Now, you would think, now that we know what we know about climate change, that this policy will be reversed. But in fact, emission projections from the EPA suggest that we are still heading for an increase in agricultural emissions of nearly 4% by 2030. Now, you'll remember, some of you, if you were following Irish political discussions, that the most recent government has introduced a programme for government commitment to reduce emissions by 7% per annum, or 51% by 2030. So there's absolutely no way that target can be achieved if agricultural output from the dairy sector particularly increases in the way that is planned. So agriculture is Ireland's single largest contributor to overall emissions at over 35%. But the EPA and other government departments are really short on policies to address this, except to say that agriculture should do its fair share, and that the target should be, and this is from the EPA, to stabilise emissions from agriculture at 2020 levels, which is basically giving the sector a free pass since 2011. And meanwhile, policy is still galloping off in pursuit of dairy expansion and further herd growth to increase to 1.65 million dairy cattle by 2027. And we have a very large beef herd as well. The next agri-food strategy is being finalised right now, will be published, I suspect, in the next month. And it will probably chart yet further growth in the sector, resulting in more greenhouse gas emissions, more water quality pressures, more live exports, and the further commodification of the food chain. And in truth, of course, we don't produce food in Ireland anymore. We produce commodities, and we import the food we actually eat. So there's a disconnect in terms of the consumer role, because we can all be going on to Veganuary, but that will not solve the problem of Ireland's greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture. So it's just important to bear that in mind. So the environmental and climatic costs of this model are effectively being socialised and globalised, while a small number of processors, farmers, exporters privatise the gains at the expense of nature, water quality and future generations. Now, the science is really clear, and other people will probably address what constitutes a healthy diet, and others have mentioned that, so I won't even mention the outcome of the Eat Lancet report and the clear evidence base for moving towards a plant-based diet for human health, for environment, and for managing our land in a much more efficient, ecologically sustainable way within planetary boundaries. But I just wanted to highlight a few action steps that absolutely have to take, because we are a policy-focused coalition. And then I'll conclude with a more philosophical, ethical point, if I might. The first thing is that agriculture must be part of the climate mitigation strategy. And that means year-on-year cuts of methane and nitrous oxide in the region of 5 to 10% per annum. But that's not even on the political or policy agenda at the moment. Secondly, we need to reduce the influence of the dairy industry and processors on agricultural policy. Teagasc, which is our farm advisory body, needs a complete makeover and legislative change to ensure that it's meeting the needs of everybody and the environment, and not just farmers or the food processors and the exporters. We need to stop allowing propaganda from the dairy industry into schools, which is currently the case. We need to legislate for a much lower stocking rate per hectare. And this is a key intervention that supports biodiversity, but also effectively would raise the cost of meat dramatically. It would become a very expensive thing to eat meat if you only could have 1 or 1.5 head of cattle per hectare, which is what is proposed in some of the research. We need to fund farming for nature programs to support farmers, and we need to support the horticultural industry and high welfare animal farming. We need to promote vegetarianism and veganism enthusiastically within the context of food safety and public health, and make connections to the global impacts on other societies and communities around the world, the impacts of the milk powder we're exporting to countries that previously had high breastfeeding rates, and of course beef exports undermining markets in other countries. But the public needs to be persuaded of the need for higher food prices, and this is a really difficult one to get around because food is incredibly cheap. We need to make friends with journalists and use the media and not feel that it's just a wall of rejection. It feels like that sometimes, but there are so many good news stories from the world of veganism and vegetarianism and healthy eating. Very often it's the influencers who are, the focus is on them as innovators, but in fact the health benefits and the public policy and environmental benefits don't get as much airtime. And I just want to conclude with one sort of more philosophical point, which is that people do react, especially in a culture where we eat a lot of meat, as we do in Ireland. We react very negatively to being told what to eat, and especially to being told what not to eat for ethical reasons. And that's partly a cultural thing, but it's also because of the distinctive way that conceptions of the public and the private are drawn, and the line between those is drawn in our Western society. And that argument that, it isn't appropriate to bring in questions of animal rights or animal welfare or what people eat into politics is exactly the same argument that was used to stop the women's rights movement, to stop women getting the vote, and to stop countries getting independence. It was just getting things onto the agenda is sometimes the hardest part. And the way you get things onto the agenda is often by making precisely the moral argument in the way that it was made to abolish slavery, to advance the cause of women's right to vote, to campaign against racism and all forms of exclusion. And as Dale Jamieson put it, this struggle for decarbonisation and the protection of nature and non-human species is our generation's struggle for moral progress. And I think if sometimes we shy away from making that argument because it's very controversial and people get upset, but that's exactly what needs to happen to get it onto the agenda. So I'll leave you with that thought, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you so much, Sadhbh. I mean, it's amazing. There's so much to unpack there, and it's great to have you on the call. I mean, I love the philosophical note you left us on as well, and it really reminds me of one of my favorite quotes of all time is a Gandhi quote, and he says, the moral progress of a nation can be judged by the way it treats its animals. And it's a very, I mean, it hits you, that statement, and you're right, it's such a contentious issue. But on the one hand, we have, all these policies being made that are completely out of alignment with where we need to go. And it's about getting people morally, engaged and emotionally engaged. And that's the task we have at hand. So thank you for bringing up those 2 points. Our next speaker is Inez Ajuda, and Inez is from the Eurogroup for Animals, which is a Brussels-based organization that seeks to improve the treatment of animals throughout the European Union, and they represent animal welfare organizations in almost all European member states. So Inez joined Eurogroup for Animals in 2020 as the manager of the farm team. In addition to her position at Eurogroup, she's the editor of the magazine Ruminantes, a publication in Portuguese specialized in veterinary sciences and ruminants. And prior to her role, Inez was the research manager for the European Food Business Engagement Team at Compassion in World Farming. She holds an integrated master's degree in veterinary medicine from the University of Lisbon, where she also lectured, supervised graduate students, and conducted an extensive research project on farm animal welfare indicators after her graduation, all the while practicing as a farm farm animal veterinary surgeon. So we're delighted to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us, Inez. And you're going to talk to us a little bit, I think, about the work of your group for animals and what's happening and what can be done at the EU level.
Yes, thank you, Aoife. I'm really happy to be here, and it's been so inspiring so far with all the speakers, and so thank you for this opportunity. So yes, one of the things that I would like to bring to attention, and I would bring you a little bit of the Brussels bubble, as we call it, because sometimes, and I was one of those people, because I used to work for one of our members, Compassion Involved Farming in the UK, and I was a little bit outside of the Brussels bubble, and then now that I'm in, I can see, that there's a lot of things that I would say craftily escape us, because they happen behind closed doors, and now with the lockdowns it's even easier to do so. So for us it's very important to try and bring the Brussels bubble to everyone else, so people understand what's happening, and also understand how big it can be and how impactful we can be, because as citizens in the EU sometimes we feel like it's too detached or it's too far away, and we don't really have a voice, so politicians will not listen to us, but actually there is a lot we can do. And one of the things that was very curious for the animal welfare movement, especially to bring light to the reduction and the replacement of animal products, was the pandemic. We collected kind of feedback from our members, and we have a lot of meetings and discussions with them. And they said, it's harder for us to advocate and to bring the message out there sometimes. But what was a very unfortunate event that no one would ever want to experience, it helped a lot the movement, and a lot for people that weren't even thinking about how animals were treated and produced to stop and ask us about it and really listen to it, including people in politics and people in the Brussels bubble. So what happened with the movement and amongst our members, which, as Aoife said, are more than 70 member organizations, is that we organize ourselves to build this argument, to bring to light why are we all stuck at home, and why there are so many people dying and getting sick. What's the real reason? And we, at our group, we work with farm animals, but we also work, for example, with wild animals. So we really combine the arguments, talking about how the urbanization, the wildlife trafficking, the way farming is killing habitats and destroying biodiversity, and really approaching us to animals that we traditionally and should never be close to, such as wild animals. And that's how we got into the pandemic. We also, used that opportunity to talk about how we had a lot of warnings that this was coming due to factory farming. We can see, as a vet, I also, use this as to really explain, if someone asked me as a vet, were you expecting this to happen? Of course, we see this happening all the time. All those crammed animals passing disease to another animal, even if viruses and bacteria is getting more efficient, getting more resistance to any solution that we try to find to solve the problem, without actually addressing the root cause, which is having all these animals crammed, stressed, suffering, very sensitive to any disease, unable to combat them. It's really obvious that this was happening. The problem is the general public couldn't see it, because this all happens behind closed doors, as we've been talking about. So we are using the urgency and now, a little bit that egocentric perspective of that humans usually have, which is, now that it affects me, I really want to know. So we are using a lot of these arguments, especially with politicians, to look at the bigger picture and try to solve it. The good news is, at European level, for the first time in maybe 17 years, my colleagues that have been here for a lot of years say probably even before that, we have clear opportunities and a clear sign from the legislators that they want to do something. Having said that, there are a lot that don't want to do. So we have to, more than any time before, we have to voice about not just about improving animal welfare, because it's a big part of it as well and a big part for our movement, but especially talking about how to reduce the production and consumption of animal products. And for example, to give you an example of one thing that is happening now, that has been happening for a lot of times, and I'm not sure if in Ireland it was this obvious this year, but in a lot of the European countries, there was a campaign on televisions and radio promoting meat consumption, and really with very, very fake facts, obviously fake, but they were targeting younger people as well, which was very scary. And I'm Portuguese, and it was the first time that I saw in Portuguese TV an explicit advert promoting meat and targeting it to teenagers and young adults, which are the ones that I think, you know, we put a lot of hope that are already looking at the world in a different way. So one of the things that we are trying to do at the European level is to stop that these campaigns are promoted by EU funding, by our, you know, public money is promoting this. And it's completely contradictory to everything, all the other messages that we are hearing about lowering the emissions of carbon, about the treaties, about, you know, how the European Union wants to be carbon neutral and wants to be sustainable. And one of the things that we really want to show is shed light into this scandal that is totally legal and permitted, and it's okay. But we really need to shed light into how there is a despair again, you know, again, that disconnection between what are the ambitions, what are the targets, what are everything that the European Union wants to achieve and the co-legislators, and then they are financing this type of practices. So I think it's quite obvious, and there is, I would say, don't underestimate how much the public can influence, especially via your representatives in the European Parliament. They are really, really aware of what the public wants, and they're really influenced by what the public asks them to. So that's one specific action that everyone can do, is look up who represents Ireland in the European Parliament across the different parties, because that's very important. Although, you know, for example, the Greens are much more close to our cause, but it's important to be across the Parliament because they are friends in all the parties, and really show and message and voice about how important it is to adhere to this movement. So.
Thank you so much, Inez. And it's great to have that European perspective. You know, oftentimes we're an island in Ireland, and we forget that we're connected to this massive global network sometimes. So it's great to hear that you know, the work that Eurogroup for Animals is doing, and that there is such a strong lobby in Europe for this. And you raised a great point. I think that's, you know, essential to this. You know, why vegan? Why now? The pandemic has just thrown us into this, you know, shock realization of the impact of animal farming and our entire relationship with animals. And, you know, it's a tragic crisis, but it's also a real opportunity that we can grasp and say, you know, to use for the movement. So it's definitely had, you know, a positive side from that aspect. So thank you for bringing that up. So we're going to go from European, you know, regional level to local level now. And our next speaker is Donna Cooney, and Donna is a Green Party councillor for Clontarf, and she's been a community activist for 25 years, working to protect the Dublin Bay area and improve it with cycleways and playgrounds and sporting facilities. She's a founder of the Dublin Bay North Repeal the 8th, and also works towards protecting natural and built heritage and advocates for equality, healthy, resilient communities and climate action. She also used to write for an alternative green magazine on Cuerhon in the 90s, where articles such as Good Karma Food focused on the ethics around food through recipes and interviews. So Donna's going to talk to us a little bit about, you know, local level activism, governance, and her Veganuary journey. And Donna, you've been posting brilliantly on Twitter, sharing all your recipes and your Veganuary discoveries. So we really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, well, I suppose that's what I'm trying to do is be the change I want to make. as a child, and I suppose most children really, I think, would be naturally vegetarian or vegan, you know, and it's like they're introduced to meat like a normal thing, and it's almost disguised and hidden in their food. But when I first discovered, when I suppose my mind opened and I became conscious of it, it was watching sort of, you know, David Attenborough, you know, programs, and I realized we were top of some food chain and we were eating all these animals, and I hadn't even thought about it. And then I started to think, what's the difference between that and eating, you know, my own, you know, I don't know, it just felt really right. And then I looked into it and explored that we could, you know, be quite healthy without eating meat or animal products. So yeah, so I mean, I think that's, you know, one of the things, as well as being the more I'm conscious that was maybe on animal welfare, I wasn't conscious of the environmental effects at the time. And that's only really sort of over the last, you know, 2 decades maybe, where there's a consciousness of the connect between our carbon output and, you know, and animals, you know, our beef and our dairy herd. And, you know, and then this idea that it's being extended, and that, you know, we have what we do locally, you know, we act locally, but we think globally, which is part of the whole green movement. And, you know, if we're producing, you know, all that dairy, and then it's going across to countries that wouldn't even had, like China, that never had a sort of had any sort of dairy, wasn't naturally part of the food diet, and now we're, you know, there's all this powder milk that's going over for baby formula. It's ethically, you know, very wrong. But at the same time, I think, you know, I don't like to preach to people, you know, so, you know, why now? I mean, I've been vegetarian most of my life now at this point. I'm only vegan recently, and I've tried vegan on and off throughout my vegetarianism, and often found it quite difficult. So that's why, you know, I look at other people like, it can be difficult. It's sort of easier now because there's so many more other products. You know, before you used to have to sort of, you know, grind your own nuts down, make up your nut burgers, and it was just so much work and effort. Now you can sort of be, you know, quite an easy, you know, I enjoy cooking, but not everybody wants to cook all the day, every day, and spend lots of time cooking. You know, you don't always have time in your lifestyle, and other people, you go out for a meal, you know, and things. But now it's just, there's not one restaurant that doesn't, you can take, you know, I can order from Harry Burns this evening if I feel like getting a takeout, and they have Boco vegan pizzas, you know what I mean, locally. I mean, it's just, I could even now, and now just to compete, the main chains are doing their vegan pizzas down in Fairview and 4-star pizza or whatever. So I mean, there's no actual reason now that, you know, it's not really easy to have really tasty, nutritious food without the guilt. And that's sort of where that Good Karma food articles came in. It's just, you know, how much more enjoyable is it to have a meal that's colorful, nutritious, tasty, and not feel any, you know, guilt about it. You know, it's sort of, it tastes better without the guilt, you know. And you know, so I suppose, yeah, it's just, and then showing people that they can have a lot of energy, actually more energy on a vegan diet as well, you know, that you can, you know, you can run and you can cycle and you can be physically active. And I suppose one of the things as well about being, you know, a Green Party representative, and is I take it very seriously, my pledge, and we pledge basically to live a green lifestyle. And in my mind, other people have different views, but in my mind, that's not only your transport and the way you live your life, but it's also what you eat, what you consume. So, you know, that to me was, you know, really important. You know, and so yeah, so I think you do have to be the change that you want, and you need to send that message out in everything that you do. And after me now we've got a young speaker, and I just think it's absolutely fantastic to see so many young people that have, you know, taken up this as a movement and as a way of life. And it really is, it's not just a diet, it's a way of life, and it has, you know, such big impacts. And, you know, like as consumers, we can make that change, because, you know, it's not about, as I've said, you know, it's not about the individual and putting all the responsibility on the individual, but at the same time, you know, we can bring about the change, because you can see already consumers have led a demand now that's there, that, you know, when I was younger, you know, you went into like a restaurant and there wasn't any vegetarian. Like I think there was a Well-Fed Cafe, was a vegetarian restaurant in town. We had you know, blazing salads, which are still there, but it was just such, you know, there was so little available, and it's just, you know, it's just completely, you know, literally mushroomed, and it's just wonderful. Like my son Isaac and Isabel are both very strong vegan, and you know, and they're friends, and it just seems to sort of, you know, it grows, it sort of you know, and they amplify the message, and you know, it's fantastic. So I'm just really looking forward to listen to Ferdia after me here as well, because they are our future. I suppose we're here to prove that you can do it and sustain and at your life, but and then in terms of a local level, what we can do at a local level, I suppose it's about having, you know, food available at a local level in our markets, about producing food, about having more community gardens. It's about more food security, and that's really important, as we've seen. So it's, you know, if we were to sort of cut off for whatever reason, be it COVID, be it, you know, environmental issue, be it a storm, you know, how quickly are our shelves emptied? So it's more important than ever that we produce food as locally as we possibly can. And so it's like not just about parks thinking, let's just put nice pretty flowers here and it's good, you know, that they do that, and but that we do have areas where people can grow food as locally as possible. It's about reimagining spaces in the urban area, in terms of even car parks. Can we turn car parks into places where we grow food and store bicycles instead, you know? So, you know, so there's all these things that we need to do, and that's possible to do at Dublin City Council level as well. So thanks very much for inviting me, and it's brilliant. I mean, just think this is a great event, and you know, I'm really enjoying listening to the other speakers.
Thank you so much, Donna. And yeah, you thank you for my segue as well into Ferdia. But you did also, you know, I loved your point about kind of reimagining spaces, and we need to grow more food locally. You know, as Sadhbh said, we import most of our food. So even if we all went vegan tomorrow, it kind of wouldn't really make much of a difference. We have to look at the food system, you know, as a whole and go, well, how are we, you know, connecting local level, you know, consumption and production? And so, yeah, it is that overarching, you know, way that we need to kind of tackle this in a holistic perspective. So thank you for bringing that in, and I, you know, great to hear your vision for local level action in Clontarf. I look forward to all the parking lots being turned into public gardens. That would be fantastic. Let's put that out there. So yeah, I'll introduce our next speaker now. Ferdia Shaw is 16 years old, and he is the star of the Disney movie Artemis Fowl, the hit global series actually written by an Irish writer called Owen Colfer. Ferdia lives in Kilkenny, where he attends the local Irish secondary public school and is educated through the Irish language. He's recently started to use his platform and newfound following to advocate for climate action, the environment, and the ethical treatment of animals. And Ferdia also follows a vegan lifestyle. And I have to say, Ferdia, you're 16. I'm so impressed that you're here with us this evening and that you agreed to talk. I think it's, like Donna said, you know, the youth, the way they've kind of taken hold of this movement and brought it forward is so inspiring. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's amazing the turnout that we've had. I can't believe it. Like, there's so much interest in this. So fair play to everyone who's come to this event. It's really cool. And thanks to Aoife and everyone for organizing it, because so much effort has been put into this thing. So anyway, my personal experience with veganism. I've been vegan for roughly 4 years now, since I started work on the film Artemis Fowl. It was kind of handy for me to do it then, because it was just myself and my mum over in the UK, so there were much less meals to plan. I actually went vegan quite gradually. I started off eating meat and then gave up meat when I was 7, fish when I was 9, and finally dairy and eggs when I was 12. So it was a really gradual process, which I find very useful because it let you learn about all the different food that was available and how to live a healthy lifestyle by it. Being vegan has really impacted my life in a good way as well. I experiment a lot more with my cooking. I think you tend to experiment and discover more when leading a vegan lifestyle. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, but I think that's all part of the fun. And of course, I've learned about the plight of animals, which is a really important topic for me. I was just looking at the figures the other day, and it was shocking what was going on. There's there were 30,000 cattle slaughtered just in 1 week in January. And I couldn't help but compare this to humans. Like, if you imagine that 30,000 humans were killed every week for 1 full year, that would be more than 1/5 of the entire population of Ireland gone, wiped out in a year, which I think it really puts it in perspective and makes you think about what we're actually putting on our plates. So yeah, as Aoife said, I've been trying to use my platform as an actor. I've been trying to use my platform as a positive influence. Even when we were working on Artemis, people were always on the set. People were always interested in why a young person such as myself was vegan. People are just always so interested in that sort of thing because it's not really learnt anywhere else. I feel like it's not really taught in schools, so it's always interesting to meet someone who has personal experience with these things. I remember in Vietnam as well, we had our first week of shooting there, and on our first day, instead of going to the hotel with its typical Western-based food, we went out with one of the costume lads and went to this vegan local place and had a really nice lunch. So again, you tend to explore more when you're vegan. My top tips when changing to a plant-based diet would be, first off, get yourself a couple of really good recipe books. Two of my favorites are the Happy Pear and the Bosch book. The Happy Pear makes things really accessible and simple to make. So if you're looking for something to make on the go, that's what you go for. And I really like the way the Bosch book kind of lays out its plans into country-based. So you can make Indian one night, Mexican, Italian. I love all that stuff. So it takes a bit of planning now. So if you're going to do that, you want to be planning for the Bosch book, but the Happy Pear is really simple. So you can make that whenever you want. And as Donna said, like, restaurants have just mushroomed in the past couple of years, actually. Like, we've just been getting so much more selection for vegans. I just can't believe it. Any takeaway place will always have a vegan option. Oh, and if you're interested in baking as well, BBC Good Food. The BBC Good Food website is very, very good. I go there a lot for making cookies, cakes, brownies. They're really, really good for that. And of course, the Veganuary website are uploading every single day for anyone who's signed up. So I think that's about it for me, really. I mean, what have you got to lose? I think it's just, as Donna said again, it's a great feeling to know that nothing has died for your dinner. So yeah, enjoy, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ferdia, and I think it's such a great message to young people. I love your tips. I'm glad you mentioned the Happy Pear. We have a little surprise at the end of the call, but it is surprising when someone so young takes such a strong stance on something. And I'd be very interested to know what made you go vegetarian at 7. I don't know if I was thinking in those terms when at that age, but maybe we can come back to that in one of the questions. Our final speaker, last but not least, we are delighted to have Pauline McLynn tonight. And Pauline is an actor and writer, and many of you may recognize her as Mrs. Doyle in the famed Father Ted series. She's a long-standing animal rights activist, and she's also patron of the Little Hill Animal Rescue and Birmingham Greyhound Protection. Pauline has spoken out powerfully against the greyhound racing industry and against cruelty to animals in Ireland, and she's been increasingly interested in where her food comes from, and as such advocates for more compassion in the food system. So Pauline is going to talk to us a little bit about her advocacy and activism. Thanks, Pauline. I think you might be a little bit frozen there, but if you see the mute,
there.
If you can unmute yourself.
Am I on now?
Yes, fabulous.
Yay,
we can hear you.
This thing is on. Marvelous. Yes, I have to say that I speak tonight just as the most ordinary of people. I have no expertise in any area whatsoever. I have reviews to prove that as an actor and a writer. So, trust me on that. But to put into context, how I arrive where I am at the moment, I was born in 1962, last century, Ferdia. you may have heard of it, the 20th century. And so yes, 58 in case anyone's doing the mathematics, which I failed horribly in the Leaving Cert here in Ireland. But you know, Ireland has been well behind in terms of even vegetarianism, let me say. I mean, when I grew up, honestly, wafer thin ham was considered a vegetarian option on any Irish menu. So, you know, the idea of going vegetarian was just frankly crazy. I think the Hare Krishnas might have been the first to suggest that such a thing could be possible. They also did the first street theatre, so they were quite wonderful in that way. But I got involved later on in my life, and I am here still in the later part of my life, with, I suppose, animal activism, rescue mostly. And once you get involved in animal rescue, you meet so many characters of the animal variety and the bird variety that you realize that you can never kill and eat one ever again. And you also begin to realize, as I know now from the sort of agricultural end of things, I'm also an ambassador for Compassion in World Farming in the UK. I'm very aware of the cruelty involved in intensive farming. And as a result, I've gone hugely towards a plant-based diet. I guess in many ways, as a patron of Little Ill Animal Rescue, I'm kind of like, I'm forever trying to alert people to the plight of egg-laying hens, because they are possibly the cruelest treated of all of the creatures that we have in Ireland. So many of them just live in cages. Far more of them than are ever admitted by any farmer in cages. I've been into the farms, and they're culled at 18 months, just killed because they take a tiny, you know, sort of, they don't take a break in egg laying, they just go down maybe 5%, but when it's commercial and intensive, then that's not money making for the farmer. That kind of brings me to some of what was said tonight, which was, I found both inspiring and thought-provoking, particularly Sadhbh O'Neill when she was speaking about the figures when it comes to agriculture. And I think that, you know, it's made me realize, and I'm glad that she brought all of that up, just the consequences of becoming plant-based, or as much as you can to be plant-based. It's kind of like a butterfly effect. So you may feel that it's only you and that you're a solo person, but it is the flapping of one wing even, you know, creates such a ripple effect throughout the world that it really does make a huge difference. It's kind of, you know, veganism, I guess, and I'm not quite there yet, I'll admit it, for many different reasons, not least, I knit tea cozies made of wool. And I know that that's a byproduct of sheep's and so on. So, you know, I have miles to go yet. But it seems to me that veganism is a very gentle and a very kind sort of revolution. And I would like us all to remember that when we go forward with our tiny butterfly effect each, which is this: I see an awful lot of negative stuff coming and shrill, you know, stuff coming from, you know, the more, I suppose the louder of the vegan activists, if you like, where you're slagged off if you like something that kind of, if you like, apes what you used to love when you were a meat eater. And I did love eating meat. I loved the taste of it, the texture, the everything. It was very much on moral grounds that I gave it up, and I don't miss it at all. But when I see people saying, why does your nut cutlet take the shape of an animal cutlet, it seems, you know, the negative road to be going along for me. So I say, let's keep it gentle, let's keep it positive. And as long as there's nutritional yeast and Marmite in the world, you will miss nothing about the umami flavor that you were told was the meat thing. We take on a huge industry. It's all about the money. When we take on trying to you know, turn to a plant-based diet. But weirdly, this pandemic has helped us in so many ways, because I know so many people now who are living a far more mindful life, if you like, and who have the time to now concentrate on the effort of going plant-based. And it will stand to us when we come out of all of these lockdowns that we'll have it down. How we can eat, how deliciously we can eat, and how much you will not miss plant-based, or pardon me, animal-based products. So that's what I'm taking from tonight, is just the possibility and the complete positivity of that. And I hope that everybody else is as well. It's really simple. We can do it.
Thanks, Pauline. And it's great to have that message of hope and aspiration and inspiration. And you're right, you know, there's so many available options out there. And as Ferdia said and Donna said, you know, it's just ballooned in the last few years. There's kind of every reason to, and it's you know, it's much easier for us now. So thank you so much for that. We're going to open it to the floor. We have time for a couple of questions now. We've had some questions in the chat as well. I might there was a question for Toni specifically, but I wonder if I would open it up to anyone who might feel that they would want to answer this as well. You know, how would we build soil? This is quite a technical, specific question, but it speaks to, you know, what is, if we all went vegan tomorrow, you know, how does that actually work? How does that actually work from, you know, an environmental perspective? So the question really was, how would we build soil to grow food if the world were vegan, i.e. without manure? So I don't know if anyone has a particular interest in taking that question.
Well, I mean, traditionally, sorry, I was going to say traditionally in Ireland, they've used seaweed to fertilize soil, and, you know, like there's comfrey is a good one as well. Like a lot of organic and biodynamic farmers have used plant-based nutrition for the soil, and it's about, you know, rotating it as well, and doing companion growing. So there's many ways.
Yeah, because the cows and the sheep are only cycling the plant nutrients out anyways, right? The nutrients are actually coming from plants. We're just putting it through the animals first. So it's just a case of breaking those plants down in a different way so that the nutrients become available for the soil.
Can I come in as well, Aoife, and just say that I know where you're coming from, and it's important to be able to ask those questions, you know, outside the box. But I think it might be more helpful to think about scenarios of where we want to go, the pathways we're on, because we're talking about very complex earth systems here, between the soil dynamics, land management over different climates. It's really complicated, and I certainly don't have the skills, but I'm aware of a few organisations. For example, the Centre for Alternative Technology in Wales has produced a series of reports envisioning what a zero carbon Britain would look like. And one of the things they've done is they've mapped out the changes in land use that would be consistent with the UK being net zero in emissions. So if we took that as our overriding goal, and I know it's not necessarily the same starting place as the goal of getting everyone to be vegan, but just it should take us all in the same direction. You're looking at huge amounts of land area that's currently being devoted to growing animal feed, converted into growing food for human consumption. Also a huge amount of land being converted from growing and pasture for animals, converted to rewilding essentially. And also there's a need for fuel and energy to be factored into that. So the way we manage land is going to have to be completely changed. And in Ireland, we're very attached to our pretty little, you know, green fields surrounded by hedgerows, even though the reality is that there's a green desert there with very little biodiversity. But we need to start thinking about the changes to land use and how to bring those about that would be consistent with that. But I mean, from what I've read, there is absolutely no shortage of human protein available on the planet. That's not the problem. The problem is more changing behavior and changing the patterns of production and consumption, and doing it quickly because it's an emergency.
Thanks, Sadhbh. Yeah, no, it's a great point. I mean, it's such a complex issue, and it's really it's about how we manage our environment and you know, human behavior as well is a key part of this. But it's you know, chicken or the egg situation in a lot of ways. Toni, you mentioned as well the recycling of nutrients, and it brought something to my mind as well. I think when we talk a lot about protein, we just assume that the best protein comes from animals, but actually, you know, from a health perspective, and I don't know, Isabel, if you would like to weigh in. I mean, the protein that we get from animals is really recycled from plants. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess you could say that, like, the animals get their protein from the plants, and then when you eat the meat, you get the protein from the animals. But it's like this whole process when you could actually cut out the middle part, which is the meat. Yeah, in simple terms anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, it just seems like from a health perspective, from an environmental perspective, there's all these inefficiencies, you know, in the system where we just kind of have a middleman, a middle system that we need to cut out to make it more, to make it more sustainable. So I'd actually love to just go back to Ferdia as well and ask you, Ferdia, because you said you went vegetarian at age 7 and cut out fish at age 9. Do you, like, what was going through your mind at age 7 that made you want to go vegetarian?
Yeah, so my family, my brother actually kind of kicked us all off. He, when he was younger, decided that he wanted to give up meat. Okay, so my whole family went pescatarian, but they let me off. So I was still eating meat, like, all through, 4, 5, 6, okay? And I thought it grew on trees. That was just the way that I thought about it. I think that's why everyone thinks when you're that young. You never think about these things because they're not taught. So eventually, inevitably, I found out. And it's a big shock when that happens. So after seeing everyone else do it, I thought, yeah, why not? So I gave up meat straight away there. And and that kind of kicked me off to go to vegetarian. Because once you're thinking about it, you don't stop. That's the thing. Once you go one way, you're going to keep going that way. So I'm quite dug in now.
That's brilliant, and it raises the point, it's like we're herd animals, people, really, and we kind of do what other people are doing, and we see someone doing something, and it's fun and cool and inspiring, and we kind of go, like what's that about, So that's why I think Veganuary is just such a great campaign, because it it just highlights that really inviting way of inspiring people and building a movement. So we're coming up on time now. What we will do is we'll keep a copy of the questions in the chat, and if there were specific ones, what we might do is we might ask if our speakers would be able to address them in an email afterwards. We've just got 2 little things before we go. So what we wanted to do was another Menti poll, just to get a sense of what is next for everyone. So I'll just pop the Menti code and link in the chat, and if everyone could hop on over to Menti, I'll give you a minute, 30 seconds, shouldn't take long. And this is just to get a sense of what is next for you. Great, okay, I'm gonna share my screen. We've got some answers coming in. So I'm vegan and will be continuing with a plant-based diet. Great, loads of you guys. I would love to attend Go Green for Veganuary, goes live in 2022. Fantastic. We have 11 people who are definitely coming next year. I'll try Veganuary in 2022. Great, a few of you, that's fantastic. I will add more plant-based foods into my diet, a good few as well. Fantastic. So we'll probably see the numbers keep climbing. Oh, great. More people attending next year. Fantastic. Well, there's definitely, this is the first year and it really kind of came together organically, like Lucy, someone said anyway at the beginning, we really kind of came up with this about five weeks ago and right before Christmas. So not the ideal time to be kind of running a campaign, but we've had a fantastic turnout and there's obviously loads of interest in this topic. So thank you so much for everyone for joining. And to our fantastic speakers as well. We've just had an array of people from different areas, and it's really important to have that holistic perspective and hear from all sides of the conversation. So thank you so much to everyone who's joined us. We have one more fun little thing that we're going to do. We did promise that we would announce the winners of our 2 Happy Pear cookery courses. So we put the names of everyone into the proverbial the virtual hat online, and it generated 2 names for us. So we chose we have 2 Happy Pear courses, and this is the let me just get it because I'll get it wrong. It's the ultimate vegan cooking course. So it's a 4-week kind of interactive course where they just give you everything you need to know about vegan cooking. And one person was selected from the group who actually signed up to Veganuary initially in the campaign, and the other person was selected from those who registered for the call. So we don't have a drum roll sound on Zoom, but proverbial drum roll. Our winners are, from our Veganuary attendance, it is Claire Ruffalo. Congratulations, Claire. And for the attendees on the call, it was Lorna McDowell. Oh, brilliant. Okay, so what we will do is we will send you the links and more info on your courses. Ferdy mentioned the Happy Pear. They're fantastic. I don't know if you both know them, but they're an Irish duo who've just been really pushing the plant-based movement, and they're very inspiring, and they're a lot of fun as well. So I hope you both have a lot of fun with your cookery courses. And yeah, so just, big thank you from all of us at the Go Green for Veganuary team. We're definitely going to be continuing more with the Go Green for campaign. So you'll definitely be hearing from us throughout the year as well on other things. We've things planned, so stay tuned for sure. We'll send a follow-up email to everyone as well with some links about next steps and also some resources. There was a lot of things posted in the chat. It was great to see everyone interacting in the chat as well. So thank you all so much for participating, and we hope you've learned something tonight and you've been inspired, and we hope that you'll be able to continue the conversation out in your homes and your families and with your friends, because I think this is the movement. It's having these kinds of conversations. So it's great to see that we had such a good turnout for tonight. We want to do one more really quick thing. Now, we'd love to get a screenshot of everyone. If you would not like to be in the screenshot, go ahead and turn your video off, and then you'll be booted to the end of the call, so we won't capture you. But it would just be great to see a few faces from everyone here. So if everyone could give a 1, 2, 3, go green for Veganuary, and I'll take a screenshot. Yay, 1, 2, 3, go green for Veganuary. All right, okay. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a long evening on a Thursday night, so thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our speakers. It was really fantastic, and everyone for joining. Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch, and you'll be hearing from us very soon. Have a lovely night, everyone. Oh, and we'll be making the recording available online, so please share it with all your friends and everyone. Goodbye, good night.
Cool. Thanks, Eva.
Thanks, Ferdia.
Thanks, Eva. Thanks,
Eva. Good night.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.